Okay, so welcome, and so this is I think our number 7th Lunch and Learn. So we are doing this on a monthly basis, and I'm really delighted that Tanner Liang, our water quality specialist, is going to be taking us through the presentation this lunchtime. So I'm going to be passing over to Tanner to take us through this. If you do have any questions that you think of as you're going along, please use the chat function. But we will, I think there's only a few of us, so we probably will just turn the cameras on at the end and we can just have a general conversation if you have anything you'd like to raise directly with Tanner. But yeah, over to you, Tanner. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. And thank you everybody for joining us today. I know it's a gorgeous day outside, so I really appreciate you spending your time with us today. And the topic of this presentation is on lake eutrophication. So before I start talking about eutrophication, I want to know where you guys are located. Just out of curiosity, if you're participating from inside our area or outside our area, here is a description or outline of Kawartha Conservation's jurisdiction. So are you participating from Lindsay, Port Perry, inside our jurisdiction or outside our jurisdiction? And you can put the closest town in the chat. Fenland Falls, nice. So you'll be inside our area. Pontypool and Millbrook, welcome. I think we have a off topic. We have I guess a monitoring well near Pontypool. Nice. So how did you hear about this Lunch and Learn? Did you hear about it through social media or on our website? Maybe like a word of mouth? I know we had a couple people interested and participated before, or you attended another one. I think we've talked about like citizen science, water levels, and aquatic biomonitoring. So maybe those other topics were interest of you. Facebook. Nice. So I'm glad you're all joining us today. And last question, I promise. And this is to test everybody's knowledge of our watershed. So how many lakes are found in Kawartha Conservation's jurisdiction? And I've included a map here. So about 5, between 5 and 10. Oops. More than 14. Maybe some people saw that, but John said 5 to 10, 5 to 10 again. So the correct answer is more than 14. So in our area, we have, the large 5 lakes, Balsam, Cameron, Sturgeon, Pigeon, and Lake Squeagog. But we also have smaller lakes as well. Emily Lake, Goose Lake, Bass Lake, Crystal, Nogies. Some of these are located in the Pigeon Lake watershed. And a lot of them are situated around Nogies Creek area. So more northern. So thank you everybody for participating. Now on to the topic of eutrophication. So what is it? Well, it's a natural process in which a water body becomes more enriched in nutrients and mineral. So more stuff gets in it, and that causes the water body to age. So in this figure on the right, you can have natural eutrophication processes that take thousands and thousands of years to accumulate this stuff. It could be sediment, it could be nutrients, metals. But the general understanding is it's the aging of a water body. As a water body age, it gets more stuff. So kind of like humans, as we age, we accumulate more knowledge. And how we classify these age brackets or trophic status is the amount of nutrients found in the water body. In Canada, we've classified them into a number of different statuses, and these are based off of these concentrations of total phosphorus. So in more oligotrophic or nutrient poor, we have lower amounts of total phosphorus, but when we get more nutrient rich, it becomes more eutrophic, and this is where eutrophication the word eutrophication comes from. It comes from the trophic status of eutrophic. But I want to talk about that, these eutrophic systems can be as natural as oligotrophic water bodies. So these eutrophic systems, or nutrient rich, can be as natural as these nutrient poor, typical clear lake, nothing living in them systems. And in the Kawarthas, we can find out by using these diatoms. So these diatoms are single-celled algae that live in certain water conditions. And by taking sediment cores, and we can find out the fossils of these algae. And these different communities reflect different water quality from like historic past. So if we're talking about the 1800s, before lots of agriculture, before lots of urbanization, in the Kawarthas, we can see it was generally around 10 to 14 micrograms per liter. And when we compare that to these classification of trophic statuses, we can see that kind of lands in the mesotrophic category. We're not nutrient poor, there are still some nutrients in it. So nutrients is good for fish, vegetation. It makes it more lifelike instead of a clear, dead-looking lake. Now, a number of these processes can influence how a lake becomes more nutrient-rich or nutrient-poor. Generally, there's 4 major categories that can influence the characteristics of a lake or the water quality. First of all is the underlying geology. In the Kawarthas, we're bounded by 2 major geology types. One is the Pergambian shield, and then the other is the limestone geology. The second one is the flora and fauna. Humans are included in here as well. So when animals use the landscape there, they can influence what the water quality can be. Example, if a lot of birds were to eat, graze, and then thus put their waste down, that can cause the water quality to become more reflective of nutrient-rich systems. And we also have precipitation and temperature. So like in a more desert area will have different characteristics than those of a more wetter. So think about the Amazon, for example. And like I said, that can result in a variety of different lakes. As you can see here on the top right, this lake is situated on Baffin Island. Prior to this, I actually studied this lake, and it was very, very oligotrophic, so very nutrient poor. There's only a few scuds or microvertebrates that were allowed to live in here, but generally it wasn't lifelike. There wasn't, it didn't feel alive. But when you compare that to the top left, this is of more reflective of this area, the Kawarthas. You can see, although it's a lot more nutrient rich, it seems more lifelike. You got more vegetation growing. There might be more fish, more aquatics. So both submergent and emergent aquatic. And you can compare that to other lakes as well. So generally, these 4 major processes do influence the water quality of the lakes. So when we talk about eutrophication, we're usually talking about nutrients, and the 2 main nutrients that we tend to talk about is nitrogen and phosphorus. Nitrogen usually comes from the air, and it's really hard to take the nitrogen from the air and make it into a compound or a chemical that living life can use. Nitrogen is really important because it makes up amino acids that contribute to proteins, DNA, and same thing with phosphorus. When we think about nitrogen, we could think about, metal ore. When we dig it up, it's in an ore format, and we can't really use it to, for example, make a nail or make a iron beam. We need to change it in a way that is useful for us. On the other hand, phosphorus mainly comes from the ground in form of phosphate rocks. It doesn't come from the atmosphere or anything else. Generally, how lakes get phosphorus naturally is through the erosion of bedrock, phosphorus-rich bedrock, and it takes over, thousands of years to break down that rock and to convert it to a form that is available for uptake by biological communities. And when we compare these two, we can thank the experimental lakes area when they had this experiment. It was really cool if you read about it. They took a lake and they put a turbidity current, so thus splitting the lake in half. And one side they added nitrogen and carbon, and the other side they added nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus. And what they saw, as you can see this picture clearly depicts, is one side of it got really eutrophic, so algae blooms and this pea color soup that you see. So that really spearheaded, our concern about eutrophication. Now, more recently, we found that it's not just solely nitrogen and solely phosphorus. There's different speciations of nitrogen and phosphorus that we need to look at as well. And this picture, I really like it because, we have nitrogen, the second row. It's kind of more green when compared to the control, which is nothing's added. And then we got phosphorus added to a separate lake. And it's same thing, a little bit less green, but still green compared to the top. But when we combine nitrogen and phosphorus, we get this really, really deep green. And it's really reflective of, eutrophication. So, I talk about nitrogen and phosphorus being natural. So what's the big problem? If it's natural, it must be okay, right? Well, it depends on, how fast the lake is aging. Like humans, we don't really like to age really fast. We like to take our time and enjoy life. So we can think about that for lakes. Natural eutrophication processes happen over thousands and hundreds of years. But if we're switching that and we're adding more fertilizer and nutrients, we accelerate that, and that's not really great for the ecosystem. If it takes decades to fast track thousands of years of process, it's not that great. So going down into the nitty gritty of eutrophication, a lot of it is from runoff. So we have a lot of fertilizer from the terrestrial side of the watershed and urban areas as well. They run off and go into the water. While it's in the water, algae and plants love phosphorus. They will eat it up so fast and they will reproduce so really quickly. And then that kind of explodes into an algae bloom. Now, when this algae covers the surface, it blocks out all the light from reaching further into the water. And without light, those submergent plants can't really live. So they end up dying and decomposing in the water column. Now, when things decompose, they need oxygen. And when a lot of plants are, getting blocked out by light, they're not doing so well and they're decomposing, it's a lot of stuff to digest by microbes. And if you have a lot of biomass to decompose, it takes up a lot of oxygen. And when that happens, a lot of the living stuff that we like, fish, for example, don't have the necessary oxygen to stay alive and they suffocate. And when they suffocate, they usually die. And then we have, fish die-offs, for example, on the far left, far right bottom. And these eutrophication events, so to say, can happen both locally, at your local pond, for example, or they can happen at really big lakes. Lake Erie is a good example, and parts of the St. Clair. And these events are very big, so large that you can see it from space. So on the far left. And when that happens, it impacts us in a lot of ways. We don't like it when there's large algae blooms. It kind of creates a nasty smell. It kind of, we like clean water, so clear water. It impacts the fish that we like to fish for. A lot of people in the Kawarthas love fishing. So if there's a lot of fish die off, it does impact us in that way. And also a lot of people eat fish as well. And then in the Kawarthas, a lot of our water comes from these lakes or underground aquifers. Eutrophication may impact, the drinking water available. So if we have algae blooms, it could be blue-green algae, and that creates toxic compounds that are detrimental to mammals. And when we can't use that water for drinking or for recreating, we can't really use it to grow foods, for example. That algae can block up pumps and we aren't able to irrigate our crops. Now, before I dive into this, I know it's a information-rich graph, but I'll bring you through it. So here we have provincial water quality data from 1966 to most recently 2021 of many of our sites in our jurisdiction. And this is from my earlier talk in the year about water quality monitoring using the Provincial Water Quality Monitoring Network. So here we have 10 sites. Many of you may be familiar with some of these sites: Cameron Outlet, Sturgeon Outlet, Balsam, Blackstock Creek. It's on the east side of Lake Scugog. We got the Nonquan, which is on the west side, Pigeon River, near Pigeon Lake. So we have years at the bottom and total phosphorus concentration on the left side. And these depict kind of all the points that all the samples that we collect during each year, which is around 12. And then the lines and box show the spread of those. So the most natural, extremes on both end, the higher end and on the low end. Now, you can see these green boxes. These green boxes represent the mesotrophic, or the trophic status that we talked about earlier, how in the 1800s, before humans kind of farmed the area, that was kind of like the natural background concentration. So the green box represents that area. And the red line represents the provincial water quality objectives for lakes. So it says that if you want to avoid nuisance, algae growth, you kind of want the lake to be below this red line. And you can see most of our rivers and lakes tend to be above this line. Balsam, of course, is doing well, mostly because of its natural or more natural watershed. But other areas, they're doing okay. They're peaking, Burnt River, Cameron Lake, they're peaking over, but not too much. Unfortunately, Scugog and more water bodies that have more developed watersheds, they tend to do poorly. Nonquan River has really higher total phosphorus and can become more eutrophic. From the Kawartha conservation side, what we've done is we've investigated many of these water bodies. Other than using the Provincial Water Quality Monitoring Network, we've also undergo our own monitoring of these lakes for example, nutrients. And we usually come out with, it's called a lake characterization plan. And we usually monitor for 3 to 5 years intensely the water body and the surrounding catchment. And we look at water quality, water quantity, the different land uses, and the aquatic biological communities. And we take the 3 to 5 years worth of data and we outline pressing concerns. So if it's a tributary that's, hey, why is this tributary having large amounts of phosphorus in it? We outline that in the plan, and then we come up with management goals to kind of mitigate some of the, for example, eutrophication negative impacts. So we've been all across the watershed. This is a cool map that my colleague Nancy developed, and it shows all the sites that we've been to in our watershed doing these lake characterization plans. So all these plans are available for free on our website. So if you're curious about, your local water body, what kind of concentrations or phosphorus or nitrogen concentrations are in there, you can definitely take a look at those reports. And new this year, we're on Lake Dalrymple. So what can you do as local residents of the watershed? Well, there are ways to mitigate how much phosphorus enters the water. And it starts on the terrestrial side. So on a residential lot, you could, make a rain garden or a bioretention cell that holds that water after a storm, and it slowly filters the contaminants away and leaving a more clean water to, further down the watershed and eventually into the lake. If you have a property that, has lots of shoreline, you could possibly think about, enhancing the riparian zone or the shoreline. And on the right here is generally what is recommended in terms of how wide this riparian zone should be. So, if there's a lot of septic tanks. So if you want to reduce the amount of fecal bacteria that's going into your lake, maybe, you have a septic tank and then a riparian zone and then the water's edge where you like to go swim. Nobody really wants feces in their water as they swim around. So the recommended kind of buffer zone to reduce, there's always going to be natural fetal bacteria in the lake, but to reduce the amount of human sources, you would go for 30 meters. And 30 meters generally is a well-rounded number for a number of different things. It could be for sediment removal. So if there's a lot of erosion going on, upstream or upland, having that buffer will help mitigate the amount of particulates going into the water. And it could be good for wildlife as well. If you're a birder or you have like a cool vernal pool that's kind of like nearby, having that big buffer zone would be great for not only yourself, but those neighbors that we share this watershed with. If you're a farmer or know of somebody in agriculture, you could take advantage of cover crops, and that reduces the amount of sediment going into water bodies. And those sediments are carbon, but also they have lots of fertilizer residue from the growing season. When we have fertilizer, when we apply fertilizer, it's always good to quickly bind it to carbon-based compounds. Phosphorus is really sticky, so that's a great advantage of using a cover crop. You can also apply a fencing system to reduce cattle from directly pooping into the water. Poop has a lot of nutrients, so if we were to fence that off and allow cows to kind of poop further away, having that riparian zone will help filter out or uptake some of that nutrients before it goes into the water body. And if you notice, all those mitigation measures are on the terrestrial side or on land. They're not in the water. And the reason is it's all water is lake water. If we want to have clean water down here, we need to do something about the water before it reaches in the lake or river. We have precipitation or rain coming in. That's usually generally more clean than what we find in the lake water. So we want to keep all these processes at max filtering and phosphorus kind of like uptake before it reaches down here. And that will kind of help keep the system from going too crazy in terms of eutrophication. And Kawartha conservation does offer money. Everybody likes free money. I know I do. So Kawartha conservation does have this amazing grant for both of our kind of like regions. So we have Durham region and we have City of Kawartha Lakes. You know, in Fenland Falls, you'd go for the Kawartha Water Fund. If you're, you know, near Port Perry or Caesarea, for example, you would apply for the Scugog Water Fund. And these help landowners or a community kind of implement those measures I was talking about. So you can apply for fencing to keep cattle out. You can naturalize your shoreline. Maybe you want some cool wetland plants. I know the cardinal flower right now is in bloom, and that's great for pollinators, stream health, but also for birds as well. The ruby-throated hummingbird uses it. You can also upgrade your septic system, or generally, if you want more trees, maybe you have an open field that you're not really using. It's not that great for growing hay or straw or cash crop. You might want to think about applying for this grant to get more trees being put. So that is my blurb on eutrophication. So thank you for listening. Please let me know how I did or ask any questions. And don't forget to come back in September where Brett is going to talk about fish and temperature. It's going to be really interesting. I think he's going to talk about brook trout actually. So thank you again.
Thanks, Tanner. That was a really great presentation, and I feel like I've learned a lot as well. So that's fantastic. If anybody would like to turn on their cameras and unmute yourselves and ask any questions, feel free to. We will obviously hang around and answer any questions that you might have. And the presentation will be uploaded to our website. So if you want to go back and review it again, it will be available through our events area. So yeah, are there any questions?
Tanner, it's John in Fenland Falls. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hi, John. How are you doing today?
Yes, I'm great. And thank you very much. That was extremely informative. Very, very much appreciated. I just wonder if you could comment on the efforts of municipalities that are along the Kawartha Lake system to upgrade their municipal water and sewage treatment. I know there has been an effort about that, but I'm just not really sure where all of those efforts are at right now.
I'm not too sure about exactly the wastewater treatment plant. You might want to ask the municipalities for that. I know they are regulated extremely in terms of what they discharge, and they have to kind of treat it in a way that is below a certain guideline, and all that information is out and about on the World Wide Web. And I also know that if they can't, say there's a big storm, there's a lot of rain, and it might overload the system, they have to kind of measure how much has been discharged that is untreated. And and it's all, yeah. So if I didn't answer your question, I'm sorry, but that is all.
No, I just wondered if you were kind of intimate with that kind of stuff, and like who would want to be, actually, to be honest with you. But
that's important.
Well, and you can correct me, my kind of previous understandings just regarding a nutrient annually leaching, running off into our lakes, that the agricultural community and the municipalities are two of the biggest contributors, if you will, to runoff and to nutrient in the lake on an annual basis. Am I right about
that? Somewhat. You can check the lake characterization plan. We actually categorize which sources contribute the most in terms of nutrients. I know these wastewater treatment facilities, they are running at like 80 to 90% efficiency.
Right.
And yeah, all that. So I don't want to like point fingers and blame, but it's everybody's issue, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, if we think about, you know, land use surrounding the lake, you know, if we think about the 30 meters, for example, around
Yeah.
each lake, most of it's residential. So,
Yeah.
you know, if everybody has a septic tank that's running at 50%, you know, that's a lot that's leaching in, for
Yes.
example, right?
Yep.
But there's also, you know, that's just the shoreline. We're not even talking about the major river systems and their land use. So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot, but take a look at those characterization plans. You don't have to read it all. I would just skip to, I'm more of a figures person, so I would just skip to the figures for water quality, and you'll see you're by Fenland Falls, so Sturgeon and Cameron would be two reports you would look into.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Actually, I have lots of questions, but I'll let other people jump in.
Well, carry on unless any of the other attendees would like to ask a question.
You can also, if you're shy or you don't want to talk, you can also post the question in the chat as well. And then Emma can ask for you.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
So carry on.
I would just share one observation, really, and just going back to kind of the residential land use around lakes. So I've been on Cameron Lake since I was a kid, so well over 50 years. And I have to say, in the last 10 years, my own personal observation around land use has been that a more suburbanization of cottage properties around the lakes. And what that means is more and more trees coming down. You talked about the buffer, you know, that whole kind of sacred kind of part of the shoreline. I don't think most people, at least it's my feeling, most people are unaware of that. And they create a more of a suburbanized kind of property, and even, you know, create big, huge lawns and fertilize the crap out of them. So I don't know if that comes out in any kind of data, but it's just my observation.
Well, funny enough, I think we recently did a project with Fleming College and their GIS program, where we looked at land uses across 60-ish years. So they took land use from as far as they can, and then compared it to our current land use. And you're right, there is a lot of urbanization. And I just want to talk about your thought. It is really interesting, and there is data out there, but that kind of website or piece really brings it out. You know, people can talk about numbers, but you know, having that comparison in terms of imagery really brings it home.
So which website are you talking about there?
I'm not too sure, but I can, if you send me an email, I can definitely send you the link. It's really good. It's really nice.
I'd be interested in seeing that. Yeah, thank you.
I think
I was just going to jump in there. So that project was specific around Lake Scugog.
Oh, okay.
So it's a joint project between, well, the Fleming students were leading it, but we provided a lot of the mapping and information for them over that period of time. So it does show an interesting transition from where you're describing through to a more urbanized shoreline over the years. And so, yeah, that one is specifically Lake Scugog. We did do a project last year looking at shoreline plans and policies, which really was comparing different policy direction of municipalities that are similar to our own. And so that, again, was really looking at this transformation over the years to a more urban and more densely populated shoreline as well, which we are seeing across all of our lakes, I would say, as well. So there's, I guess what I'm trying to say is we are aware of it, the municipalities are, and they're looking at their policies and how to address that, because the kind of reduction of treed and vegetated shorelines obviously has an impact. So just really looking at, you know, how we can influence that, and just kind of put some things in place. And as you say, most people are unaware, you know, they're moving from urban areas, they're buying a cottage, they want it to look nice, so they're kind of making it similar to how they would have a property if they're in the city or in a more suburban area, which doesn't really always tally with the more naturalized environment.
No, I think actually that whole idea about messaging, communication, you know, I often make the comment that, you know, their notion of a lake in the heritage, I mean, they don't have any concept of the heritage of the lake or the natural, you know, kind of no real in-depth kind of understanding of that. But I often think that they're just browsing magazines and they're kind of creating a magazine image of what they think is appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. The Homes and Gardens type magazines are.
I guess what I'm really saying is you don't often see, you know, and I guess this would be a marketing communication kind of notion, images of shorelines that have lots of natural tree and vegetative quality to them, but expressed in a way that highlights their beauty, and you just don't see that. You see things that are more kind of Disney World-ish, if you will, or, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, like a lot of people moving up here, they do care about the lake. They do want like good water quality. They want, you know, they want to swim in water that they don't have to like touch algae blooms all the time, sort of say.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's just making that connection.
Yes, and I'm not being disparaging in any way or pointing fingers or anything like that. I think people really do want to, you know, are terribly concerned about water quality and the lake. It's just a matter of education and also awareness building that needs to be done more, I think.
Yes, thank you for that. Just noticed Sharon had made a comment in the chat. And so saying, I'm on Sturgeon Lake at Long Beach on a 50-foot lakefront. So many more weeds this year. What can we do about it? Tanner, I don't know if you want to jump in. I'm happy to contribute to that one.
I can take a stab at it. I'm not a macrophyte expert, so to say. But from my current knowledge, I know this year has been an anomaly in terms of vegetation growth across many lakes. So the milfoil this year seems to be on steroids and just been growing a lot. And but I just want to show you, Sharon. Currently, Kawartha Conservation, you can apply to the grant that I just mentioned, and you can use that pot of money to mitigate kind of that invasive species, the milfoil, if you're talking about that. So you and a bunch of people, maybe your neighbor who's also concerned, can apply and possibly rent out a harvester, and they may reduce the amount of vegetation in front of your lot. But also, I just want to note that depending on which one, you know, we're in the Kawarthas, it's naturally nutrient, has some nutrient. And because of the nearshore environment, that's usually where the vegetation is. So we don't want, you know, Kawarthas to be dead with no vegetation. That's not really what the Kawartha is. Kawartha is supposed to have some vegetation. And I'm not just saying, yay, we want more milfoil, because we definitely don't want more invasive, but we want like a healthy community of natural vegetation, because that also keeps in check the amount of nutrients that's in the water.
So thanks, Tanner. And just noticing Lyle has put some comments about muck blower units, keeping weeds away. I was just going to say we actually have a project this year called our Aquatic Plant Control Project, which is looking at some bubbly units in a number of lakes to see how effective they are. So this is a research-based project where we had to get permission from Parks Canada, for example, because we are putting something within the water, which they have jurisdiction over. So I guess we can't really comment at this point on specific units, but we are looking into the effectiveness of different systems to see if there might be something suitable, for example, that Trent Severn Waterways would be happy with, and that members of the public could use on their properties as well. So again, Tanner, I don't know if you've got anything to add on that one.
Nope. Just keep in touch, because I'm thinking that we will kind of like showcase what we've found in terms of these bubblers or thrusters, so to say. So we are looking at a variety of different things, and we share this watershed with not only our human neighbors but also the animals as well. So we're also looking at does this impact fish spawning, for example. In the spring, lots of warm water fisheries, stuff that we like to catch, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, they spawn in the shallows. So we don't want to put this thing and then, kind of like remove nesting area for these fish as well. So, we're also looking at water quality as well throughout this project. So we're definitely taking a lot of different stuff. So stay tuned. Sharon, I just put this slide up so that you can take a look at you're on Sturgeon. So I would apply for the Kawartha Water Fund. You're definitely within the area that you can apply for this fund. I believe it's still open. So check out the grant, and hopefully we'll see your name on the application list.
Thanks, Tanner. And Lyle just made some more comments around recommendations being needed in terms of different units that could be used to blow the weeds away, that is what I'm trying to say, and also around when to use them. And again, going back to Tanner's comments, we hope through this project to have more information that can be shared on suitability. You said turning them on, turning them off, when is the time when we need to avoid using them, but also when is the optimum time to use them. So yeah, stay tuned, I guess, from that perspective.
I just want to add that we do have guidelines that we have to follow. Like I said, we don't share, we do share the watershed with other animals and whatnot. And the recommendation is that you're not supposed to do any kind of like in-water work until July 15th. That is for warm water fisheries. And that's because like I said, a lot of things are spawning. You don't really want to mess with mama fish protecting its young. So there are guidelines out there that we have to follow, and I would recommend that if you are thinking about doing anything in the water, that you would follow those guidelines as well.
Thanks, Tanner.
And if you don't know where to find those guidelines, just shoot me an email. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Just on that note, Tanner, is your email there on the website, or where would we find that?
Right here. There you go.
Oh, of course, there. It was there before. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Always happy to chat about water quality, lakes, and if I don't know, I'm pretty sure my colleagues will know.
Yeah, I was going to say all our staff and contact details are on our website. So if you go to our website and just look under contacts, you'll be able to find the list of everybody and email addresses and phone numbers there as well. If there's somebody specific you want to get hold of.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Lyle. He's going to a work meeting. Sharon has said thank you as well. She'll get in touch.
Yeah.
That's great.
And thank you very much, both of you. Excellent. Excellent.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody. Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone for joining us.
All right.
It's been good.
Okay.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye.